Hey everyone, let's start healing. I'm Adrienne Murchison, and welcome to episode 66 of the Let's Start Healing podcast. We have more in common than we think, and what we have in common can change the world. I am back here with you for part 2 with Sarah Maddox and how she rose from the ashes. She rose up from an addiction to pills, and she shared some of that in part 1. And here we are back with part 2, where she will get a little more into the throes of her addiction. I am not going to delay in bringing Sarah back to you, other than to say that for me, what she describes and the lows of people in addiction is the same for everyone in or out of addiction who is going through a low point in their lives. And so some of the things that she brings up about just how she was feeling about herself, I think can resonate for anyone who is going through a difficult time. So let's get to it. Let's meet her again. Let's start healing.
And we ended up homeless, and usually we could get a hotel room, like the real cheap hotel rooms, but it was really, honestly, that's what I needed. I needed that to happen for me to realize what really, okay, so it had to come down to just me and God.
Yeah.
As long as I had anything else, like I couldn't focus on God. It's like he would give me a chance after chance after chance, and then I would like mess it up every single time.
I get what you're saying. I'm trying to put it into words, but it's like you're moving. You were constantly in motion.
Right.
And you didn't have the skills really, or tools, for lack of a better word. You didn't have the tools to know how to stop.
Right.
Or hear, an outside voice or God's voice.
Right. Like at the end, I had nothing. I remember that last week we did have drugs, but we were just so like exhausted. So they called Child Protective Services. They came in and gave my 2 daughters to my sister. Me and their dad had to get an assessment, and it turned out I had to go to inpatient treatment. And I was distraught because I was like, I can't go to inpatient treatment for 21 days. 21 days is forever. I just had a new baby. It's just crazy to me how my mind worked at that time because.
But I'm wondering too, at that time you're in the throes of your addiction, you've just had a baby. And then I'm thinking about the biological of postpartum. Was that playing a role?
I'm sure it was, but I was numbing it with. So the crazy thing is Child Protective Services got involved, but what I failed my drug test for is also the same thing that I yet again left the hospital with after I had my 3rd child. So like Child Protective Services is involved, but now I have legal prescription because I just gave birth.
Yeah.
So that kind of kept me going for like a week, and then I just didn't. It's just so hard to get out of the cycle because your mind never, like the chemicals never balance out, and you just can't see rationally.
Yeah.
I guess.
I was about to say, you're rationalizing everything.
I ended up going to inpatient treatment for 21 days, and I thought that was like the longest time in the world. But when I got there, I was 1 day sober. You had to be able to pass a drug test before they would let you into this inpatient treatment. This inpatient treatment changed my entire life. There was a counselor there who they all were like, tomorrow's your day. She's going to be like calling on you, wanting to talk to you. And like I was terrified of what was going to happen the next day. And they were like, she's psychic, so don't even try to hide anything. Psychic.
Oh.
like don't even try to hide anything from her. Tell her what she wants to know and you'll be okay. So of course, like I just told her my vague story. Up until this point, I never told a soul about being sexually abused as a child. And I was not going to tell this woman in a room, because it was men and women in our group sessions. So there was maybe 12 of us in there. I didn't know any of these people, and there's 2 counselors sitting in the front of the room, and there was no way this was going to be the time that I talked about it for the first time. But she listened to my story, and I told her kind of my mom, how my relationship with my mom was, and how I always felt like a resistance was there. And she was like, well, tell me about your mom's boyfriends. And I was like, why does she want to know that? And then I kind of told her about my mom's boyfriend that she had at one point. And then she was like, well, who hurt you? Whoa. I was like, she knows. And she knew exactly what side of the family. She knew it was on my mom's side of the family.
How did she know that?
I guess she took it of my relationship with my mother and the things that I said.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, there's something going on that's bigger than what she's saying. And so I just word vomited what happened, details. I don't even remember what she said, but she made me feel like it was okay. That shouldn't have happened to me. I didn't deserve that. And it was just like so much weight was lifted off of me.
You got the love you needed around that.
Right. And I was just so taken aback, because I've been wanting somebody to find out my whole life without me having to say it. Yeah. I couldn't believe that she did that. So I left that room feeling like a completely different person. Just getting it out that first time. And we had one-on-one session, and she kind of broke it down. I was kind of confused, angry. I wasn't really angry at the man, didn't really have any feelings towards the man, but what I had internalized was I felt guilt and shame for losing my grandmother, and not being close to her as I was, because she I couldn't, if he was in the house, I was not in the house. So
you were distant from her at a time that she's
right,
has a illness that's going to take her life.
Right. So I feel like I had a lot of guilt and shame about that I didn't even know.
Yeah. How could you?
That's how I was feeling. So she really changed my life in a way of helping me. She planted a lot of seeds that I could go back and kind of now I had a starting point of trying to determine why I do the things I do, why I am the way I am, and why I think the way I think. So I left there after 21 days, and then I went on autopilot because I had to get my children back. So I had to get a place to live, a job, and I had to do another outpatient treatment just to kind of follow up with my inpatient treatment. And then I was in the real world. So I was not prepared. 21 days was not, I left, I was 22 days clean. And then, so once I left, I had these unleashed demons, but I didn't know how to continue healing them. So it was about
that's so well put. I just have to say I struggle with that just in life, period. You recognize a problem, but then what? And you really put that well. You didn't know how to deal. They were unleashed demons, and you don't know how to deal with them. They're just there.
So, and then life's coming at me and my daughter's father, we split up in this time when I got out of rehab. And I was heartbroken.
This
So
is your youngest at the time. Did you have your third child was a daughter or a son?
a daughter.
And so was it her father?
Yes. So my
Okay.
two daughters, they have the same father, and we're together today. But we
Okay.
had split up in this time frame.
Okay. And
And
your oldest your 14-year-old is your son. Is that right?
yes, he
Okay.
has a different father.
Mm-hmm.
So we had split up during this time frame, and I was heartbroken. But it kind of gave me like this push I needed to just stay on the path, get my children back, do what I got to do.
Did
And
you
I
split
did.
up over your addiction?
No, well, he's an addict, recovering addict too.
Mm-hmm.
So he had his own journey
Mm-hmm.
going, and then when I left for rehab, he ended up leaving to go to detox while I was in rehab.
Mm-hmm.
And then just stuff came up from the past, and we just went our separate ways.
Yeah.
And then it kind of gave, like I said, like the push I needed just to, like, I guess, prove him wrong. Like, I can do this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do this, so maybe he'll miss me, or whatever kind of stuff I had going in my mind. But I got the girls back, and I had my own apartment. I was working a full-time job, completed everything. DHR Child Protective Services gave me my children back. And 1 week later, I relapsed.
Mm.
And this time it was on meth. Like,
Really? How did you get to that?
because so what I feel like I feel like my addiction wasn't drugs during these 4 months, it was social media.
Really?
So I was like, and I guess it was more like just any kind of attention, I guess, that I could get, mostly from men. And it was just, I ended up meeting this guy on social media and hung out with him that weekend after I got my children back. And apparently that's, like, I had talked about like my life and what I'm going through, and like
on social media.
I'm in recovery. So like he knew that, and I didn't even pick up on the vibe that he may be using something, but he did, and it was meth. And he was like very encouraging with it, and I mean, that was probably, like, it still shocks me to this day that I even did that, but I did. And I had never had any kind of experience with that drug. Like, I didn't know how it made you feel. Like, I didn't know that it kept you up for hours and hours. I didn't know that you lost your appetite. I didn't know that you could hallucinate. Like, I was not prepared. I guess nobody.
I'm sorry, go on.
I was not prepared, which I guess nobody should be prepared for. But
you experienced all of those things, like hallucinations and
so it was kind of like the hallucinations didn't start until I had been up a certain amount of time. Mm-hmm. So I was staying up. Well, my first experience wasn't like that. I did get really paranoid. Like, I had been up all night, so that morning I did start getting paranoid, because it's like when you're coming down off of the drug too, like you start going into this panic mode. But it was, and then I even like kind of came back to after doing it. Like, it wasn't even an everyday thing at first, but it took me a good 3 days just to like recover from that first use. And then I was just like, whoa, I'm never doing that again. That's scary. That's crazy.
But you did.
But I did. at this point, I felt like I messed up. Like I didn't know how to cope with life still to this point, and how to accept that it's okay to make a mistake. And you don't have to live in that mistake.
Right.
I went really fast. I lost a lot of weight, and my dad tried to save me. I always say if there was any human power that could save me, it would be my father. But finally he had to like let me go. He had my girls.
Wow.
Well,
where was their dad at that time?
So he was living about 45 minutes away.
Uh-huh.
So, and I had like blocked him on social media. He had his own journey. I just kind of keep it at that.
Yeah. So he wasn't in the picture.
At that point in time, he was not in the picture. And I had him like blocked on social media because I couldn't like bear to see like what he was doing. He was really trying to get clean at the beginning. How we ended up back together was because we had both relapsed. Like once I relapsed, I was like unblocked him, and I was like, well, let me see what he's doing.
How long were you using the meth before you?
So it was like March when I started using meth, and then April, May, June, July. So it was 5 months that I started using the meth, and our families just had to cut us off, both of us completely. Because at this point we're back together, and we ended up homeless, and usually we could get a hotel room, like the real cheap hotel rooms. But it was really, honestly, that's what I needed. I needed that to happen for me to realize what really, okay, so it had to come down to just me and God.
Yeah.
As long as I had anything else, like I couldn't focus on God. It's like he would give me a chance after chance after chance, and then I would like mess it up every single time.
I get what you're saying. I'm trying to put it into words, but it's like you're moving. You were constantly in motion.
Right.
And you didn't have the skills really, or tools, for lack of a better word. You didn't have the tools to know how to stop.
Right.
Or hear, an outside voice or God's voice.
Right. Like at the end, I had nothing. I remember that last week we did have drugs, but we were just so like exhausted, and the drugs really weren't even cutting it anymore. It was just that last week was like life changing. Just, I don't know if it's just because we had been going for so long or what, but we somehow ended up at this guy's house. It was real weird where we ended up, but the room that we were kind of staying in was full of like a little girl. It's like they had a baby and a little girl, 6 months old. And it was torture almost for me. I was thinking about my baby and my little girl, and it was kind of like the guilt. It's like where I needed to be at that point to like wake up. Like you have your own babies. Like, what are you doing? Like, you really want to live like this. So there was a street fight that broke out over somebody had stole my boyfriend's backpack that had nothing in it, but he was tore up over this backpack being gone. And then, men will get into like, one will say something, and then the others, I guess they have to like buff their chest or whatever. So we're like in the middle of the street, and we're walking to the gas station. His aunt was actually going to come pick us up, and we never made it to the gas station though. The street fight broke out, and I got involved and kicked this guy that was on top of my boyfriend, and his friend hit me and like knocked me to the ground. And when I got up, I saw a woman standing in her doorway on the phone, and I was like, the police are coming. And I had a warrant for my arrest because I was arrested. Let's see, this was July. So back in May, I was arrested for possession. And the police were looking for me because my dad thought that I had the girls with me. So he's like thinking they're in danger. I've completely skipped that whole part, but I had a warrant for my arrest from that experience where I spent first time ever going to jail, and I was in there for a week, and it was over Mother's Day weekend. And then when I left jail that time, when I got
What was the
out,
reason at that point?
so my dad tried again to take me back to Tennessee when I relapsed with meth, and I was not having it because that drug will also make you like hostile and just angry.
Yeah.
And like I was not having none of that. I was like, I'm not doing this. Nathan, my boyfriend is back at home. I don't want to be here. I was not in my right state of mind at all. So I drove my two girls back to Alabama with me, and I wasn't talking to my dad or answering his phone calls, and he was just really trying to make sure the girls were safe. So he like made posts on Facebook that I was missing and like be on the lookout, and then like I'm in my own little world and don't even know any of this. But they were at my my brother-in-law's house. The girls were safe, but my dad had no idea. So he finally found out where we were at this hotel, and the police came. They came and like knocked on the door and like had their guns drawn. And they were looking for the girls though, but I had drugs on me. So I was arrested.
Okay.
While I was in jail that week, my dad had the girls back in Tennessee. And when I got out, like this time, it's like every time I would hit rock bottom, except my rock bottom kept getting deeper.
Yeah.
So it was like every time something would happen, I would mess up. I'm like, surely can't get any worse than this.
Right. That wasn't your bottom.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I left jail that first time, I had no home to go to. My girls were in Tennessee, and then my son was still with his father. We didn't have a vehicle. Like it was us and our feet. And that was what I needed though.
You were homeless.
Yes. So we were homeless. We were able, like I said, to get like hotel rooms here and there. And it was a crazy experience, but I kind of felt like that's what I deserved. So like I would walk around barefooted because I felt like that's who I was and I deserved to be walking around barefooted. We would have hallucinations and we would like run away. We would get really paranoid. And we would like even run away from each other. So there was even some days like we didn't even have each other. And then like that final week when the street fight broke out, and I knew the police were coming and I had a warrant, something told me, just stay there, just go to jail. I'm tired, I'm hungry, but I just wanted to run. I gotta run.
But your higher voice is just
like
stay.
You don't sit here and wait to go to jail. That's crazy. But God was telling me like, just sit still, surrender. I've been trying to help you. This is your moment. Just surrender. And so I sat there and I did go to jail I had no idea how long I was going to be there. And I remember getting there in I don't know, I guess you call it where the intake little room, and somebody had left their cup of Kool-Aid like sitting on the other little bench. And I was so hungry and so thirsty, and I sat there like looking at this cup of Kool-Aid, and I was like, are they gonna drink that? Like, where did they go? And I remember like running over there really fast and grabbing this cup of Kool-Aid and drinking it. Like nobody was watching me, and I was like, I probably could have just asked maybe for a cup of Kool-Aid, but I laugh about it today because I was just so desperate for something to drink or eat. Long story short, I ended up being in there for, I want to say it was almost 21 days.
What were you charged with when they arrested you?
So that one was just a warrant to where when I was arrested before with possession, I was supposed to do color code. You call every morning, they pick like random colors. So if your color's chosen, you have to show up and take a drug test.
Okay.
And I was really good at calling to see if my color was called, but I did not show up. it was kind of like I just wanted to know, like,
Oh,
when that my color was called, just to be like aware,
yeah.
like now
Yeah.
I'm on the list to be
You're trying to
arrested.
be in control.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's why I had a warrant, because of that first arrest, not doing what I was supposed to be doing after that first one. And I remember seeing the judge the next day. I remember her saying, jail doesn't fix mental. And I remember getting so offended that she said that. And now I know, like, she really had my best interest at heart. But I just remember, I can remember being so offended that she said that, but I really needed help. Jail, I was there long enough to like get clean and get my mind somewhat back to homeostasis. On meth, the withdrawals, like I slept solid for the first week because I had been up for so long. I slept and I got up to eat. And then the second week, I could still tell my mind was like going in and out with what was real, what was I really hallucinating at that
What
time.
kind of things would you hallucinate?
So those are like kind of stories of their own and really kind of crazy. But one thing I did hallucinate that like really breaks my heart is I would hear a baby crying.
Oh my.
And it was like I would jump up like ready to go check on the baby, and there was no baby. I did it so many times. Nathan would even say, the babies aren't here. That is like the most painful experience, because it wasn't that I didn't love my children. I didn't even love myself.
Thank you for joining us. We have one more episode with Sarah in part 3, which is coming very, very shortly. In the meantime, let's be kind to each other and let's start healing.